de esta 19ª reunión anual de la Asociación Latinoamericana de Casos ALAC 2025 y sexto simposio de negocios y economía, casos de enseñanza y liderazgo femenino. Esperamos que la agenda vaya cumpliendo con las expectativas y esté consolidando aprendizajes alrededor de este importante tema. Saludamos a las autoridades del Politécnico y ALAC y a todos los aquí presentes. A continuación, pasaremos a la conferencia de cierre, notas del editor del Case Research Journal con Dr. Eric Delansky. Thank you, Dr. Eric, and welcome.
Thank you again. Could I have my slides up, please? Okay. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the Case Research Journal, for which I'm the editor, and the North American Case Research Association Conference, as well as some tips for case writing that I think might be helpful. So basically the tips part I'm taking from common mistakes people make when they write their cases, the things that they can improve on to make it, easy things to do to make it better. So the North American Case Research Association holds the largest case research conference annually. It's still not that big, usually about 150 to 200 people. So compared with something like Academy of Management, obviously it's much smaller. It is always a Thursday, Friday, Saturday in October. This year I will give you the dates for this year's conference. I'll also tell you about next year's conference. We have 15 tracks of cases. So in addition to tracks in marketing, operations, human resource, social enterprise, accounting, we also have language tracks in Spanish, Portuguese, French, Chinese, and Russian. Okay. And we also have what's called our startup track. So if people do not have a complete case already, they can submit a 3-page outline and start to get feedback and ideas about how to shape and improve their case. In addition to that, we have new views sessions, which are like workshops, professional development workshops, presentations, things of that nature, usually about 9 every year in 3 parallel sessions. There are also social events, obviously, meals, there's a cocktail reception. We try and pick good locations. This year's conference is just south of Los Angeles in Newport Beach, California. Next year's conference is in Orlando, Florida. And the main thing about the North American Case Research Association is we try to foster a developmental, supportive, collaborative atmosphere. So before I was part of NACRA, I would go to marketing conferences, and a lot of the time you present your work and people will ask you questions to try and find mistakes or flaws or holes in your research. That's not what this is about. This is about us helping each other, giving constructive feedback so that everyone's work gets better. So as I said, NACRA 2025 is in Newport Beach, California, October 16th to 18th. On the Thursday is the startup track I mentioned. There's also a pedagogy track where they talk about teaching with cases, so you can submit papers or articles about teaching with cases. There's an opening plenary session and an opening dinner. On Friday there's roundtable discussions, the new views sessions I mentioned, and a cocktail hour, and on Saturday more roundtable sessions and a closing session. It's at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. The deadline to submit a case for the conference has passed. It was a couple of weeks ago, but if you have the opportunity to go, even if you are not presenting a case, it is still worthwhile. Next year, as I said, will be in Orlando. I don't have the exact dates off the top of my head, but again, mid-October. The deadline for submission will be in June. So in June of 2026 or October of 2026. The roundtables at NACRA really, I feel, are what sets us apart from other conferences. So you had roundtables here, and Lorena was telling me it's a half an hour per case or so. At NACRA, if you are, for example, in the social enterprise track, there will be about 6 to 8 cases per table, depending on submissions. If there are a lot of submissions, then there are multiple tables. and you spend about 7 hours together, 4 on one day, 3 on another, so 45 minutes to an hour where everyone is talking about your case. I did not have the opportunity, well, I did have the opportunity to attend your roundtables, but unfortunately because I would have not understood anything that was said, I didn't go. But at ours, everyone else who is at the table is expected to read and provide feedback on the cases that were there. So this conference has homework. You get written by the track chair, say here are all the cases, you're expected to read them and have feedback ready for the authors, and then when it is time for your case, all the other authors will have feedback for you. Also, one last thing about the feedback, don't worry if you're new to case writing or if you don't have a lot of experience, or if, for example, you submit a case in English and your English isn't as strong, for whatever reason you decided not to submit to the cases in Spanish track. Feedback from everyone is valuable. We've had undergraduate students who are co-authors on cases at roundtables. We've had faculty who've never written a case before. All of those different perspectives are important because we need to know how our case works for a variety of audiences. What NACRA is looking for, so if it is a startup case, it's a 2 to 3 page outline. Essentially, this is what I plan to write a case about. This is where I'm going to get the data. These are the learning objectives. Here are the discussion questions that will be asked. That's all you need. And then you don't get the 45 minutes to an hour of feedback. You're at a smaller table in a smaller session, but the idea is to help shape and figure out what direction to take this case in with experienced mentors. The full cases are what I described at the round table, and then the pedagogy track, articles exploring case teaching, using cases in your courses. Usually these are discussion papers, and this is one table that meets for one afternoon. By the way, I'm happy to take questions at the end, but if you have questions while I'm talking, or if I'm talking too fast, which happens as well, feel free to raise your hand. There are other case conferences as well, so just like ALAC is a partner of NACRA, we have other partners as well. Depending on where you're located and your needs and where you might like to travel, there are all these others. I'm not going to read them all out. The one I will mention is one that I've been involved with for many years, which is the last one on the list, the Administrative Sciences Association of Canada, which also called ASAC, which is in Calgary, Alberta next May. And I only mention that one in particular because at this point in time, I think it's easier to travel for most of the people in the world to Canada than it is to travel to the United States. So if you did want a different case experience, this might be one you would think of going to. These various associations have different standards and expectations. So some very early stage research is okay. For others, it might be more like NACRA where there's a startup stream and a full case stream. Now I'm going to switch to case journals. I find case conferences very different from regular conferences. I find peer-reviewed case journals to be more similar to regular case journals in terms of the rigor and peer review that is applied. Obviously, there is going to be a range. In any discipline, there will be journals that are rigorous, that have true anonymous peer review where the standards are high. I've also submitted cases, I was telling Maria last night, where I submitted the case and 1 week later I got a conditional acceptance. And obviously the rigor of, this is not to say my cases are so fantastic, this is to say the rigor of review at that journal was not particularly strong. All journals require certain things though. They all require factual cases, so it can't be fiction, it can't be fictionalized. You can't say, well, I know this real situation, I'm going to change a few things to make it a better case. They all have to be based on fact. They all require an instructor's manual or teaching note. In addition to journals, there are also publishers. Publishers tend to have lower standards, but not necessarily. Some publishers, like the Case Center and Ivy Publishing, might have higher standards than some journals. The journal that I am the editor of is the Case Research Journal. It is the top journal in the field, and that's not just me saying that. There are other papers that have looked at the quality of case journals, and they rank the Case Research Journal at the top. Why is that? We have the most rigorous review process. We this is not a one and done, you send it in, we give you a few lines of feedback, and then you're good. This is multiple rounds of review with extensive feedback. What were you telling me, 18 pages? 18 pages is unusual, but I can tell you that when I work on a case with an author, you will get reviews from 3 reviewers, at least 2 of whom will be very experienced reviewers and likely members of the editorial review board. They will give you a lot of feedback. Then I myself will give you 4 or 5 pages of feedback on your case as well. Okay? Obviously, as you progress through the rounds of review, the feedback gets lighter, assuming you're moving forward. Our mission is to publish the best version of your case that we can. Okay? That means you have to work with us and continue to improve your case, and it means we will continue to work with you. Like what I said about NAGRA, we have a developmental focus. That means we're not out to reject a bunch of cases. Yes?
And how long time do you spend to review the case?
Okay, so there's, as you can see here, usually 2 to 4 rounds of review, and we aim for a 60-day turnaround. So if you send me your case, you'll get reviews in 2 months. You will then have 2 months to make the revisions and get it back to us, and that will happen 2 to 4 times usually. It has happened.
It's the normal time.
Yes. It will happen rarely that after 1 round a case might be accepted. Before I was editor, I sent in cases and one of them took 6 rounds. But the point is, we continue to work with you. So when a case comes in as editor, I will most likely send it out for review. That's what happens most of the time. If there are some things that need to be fixed first, but they're minor, I will send it back to you before it goes to review so you can fix those and you'll get a more positive review. And if it doesn't fit the journal, so if it's not based on true facts, or if it's not a decision-focused case, or if the decision is very old, there are certain factors that might make me say this is not a good fit with the case research journal. Okay? But if it is within what we do, then I want to work with you on it. The only other reason a case gets rejected is if we give you feedback and you don't make the changes that need to be made. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything our reviewers say. You have to respond to what they say. And that might be, yes, I agree, I made the changes, or that might be, I didn't make the changes and here's why. But you can't just ignore what the reviewers say. If you ignore what the reviewers say, then you might see your paper get rejected. There is no fee to submit. There is no particular date to submit. We accept rolling submissions. We put out 4 issues a year, 5 or 6 cases per issue. So as I said, the scope of the journal is decision-focused cases. That means 2 things to me. It means there has to be someone in the case making a decision. And it means that the case and the instructor's manual both have to be built around that decision. The decision is important. The decision is central to what we're doing. It's not, let's analyze what they've been doing for 10 years, and by the way, they kind of have to figure out what they're doing next. It has to be much more focused than that. It has to be much more specific. We also accept articles on cases. If you would like to write an article on case writing, case research, case teaching, that's fine. I recommend not submitting it directly through the Scholar One journal link. I would recommend emailing me first to see whether or not we've published something like that before, whether there's an opportunity for this. Our cases at the Case Research Journal are distributed through distributors like Harvard Publishing, Ivy Publishing, the Case Center, and others. And to give you a sense of numbers, so I said we publish about 20 to 24 cases per year. Our adoptions of cases through Harvard, one of our distributors, is over 100,000 adoptions a year. And as authors, you get royalties for those adoptions. So at the end of the year, you get a check for your share of the royalties, as well as a report that says how many times your case was used, which you can put on your CV, or you can put in your tenure application, or whatever else. We share copyright with our authors, so the copyright is held by both NAGRA and by the author. So unlike a journal article where the journal owns it and can do whatever they want with it, you are an owner of the work that you've done. I will be honest, most of the time royalties, it's not going to allow you to retire. Okay? Without putting any numbers on it, I get a nice sized check, but I've written 8 cases with CRJ. If I had written 1, then, you know, it comes around Christmas time, it's a nice bonus. The former editor, the one before me, would say it's a nice pair of shoes. Okay?
How much is the cheese?
I said I'm not going to say that. And like NAPR, we have this developmental approach. I've talked about this and talked about the process as well. One other thing I will add is if you are interested in case writing, especially if you're interested in CRJ or NAPR, I recommend you sign up as a reviewer. As long as no, I didn't say this, I apologize. All our publications are in English. Okay, all our submissions are in English, all our publications are in English, and I will add, we have authors from around the world, many of whom the English is not their first language. The way that they deal with that is they get it translated, or, well, how I would recommend it is they work with a co-author. And I have done this, I've been the English language co-author for people for whom English is not their first language. They gave me a translation of it, and I was able to help them shape it into a CRJ case. And as editor, if this is something you're interested in and you have a case, I'm happy to try and help you find a co-author. But back to my initial point, if you are proficient in English, sign up to review. Because what that means is you will see the kind of work that gets submitted to the journal, and when the decision goes back to the author, we also send all the reviews to each reviewer, anonymized of course, but you will see what other reviewers have said about the same case, and you learn a lot through that process. I have handouts, a few, I don't know if I have enough, that have a QR code that links to the web page for CRJ, as well as to the Scholar One site where you can submit or sign up as a reviewer. I also have some of my business cards. Feel free to contact me afterwards with questions. I'm happy to do that. I recognize that not every case is right for the case research journal. Okay, it might not be decision focused, the decision might be older. You might not want to go through all those rounds of review. I just sent a case in, not to my own journal, but somewhere else there I knew I could get it published faster because it's about tariffs and I want it in classrooms as soon as possible. If I sent it to CRJ, I know it's going to take months. It will be a better publication. It will be something I list as a peer-reviewed journal publication on my CV, whereas where I sent it, I would not do that. But I had different goals with different cases. There are lots of other good case journals as well. There's the Journal of Case Research, the Case Journal, the Business Case Journal. There are lots and lots of them, more than even I know. I have co-authors who will find journals for us to submit to. I've never heard of these journals, but if it works for them, I'm happy to submit the work there. So, some tips for you. So this conference, I think, has started giving you an excellent foundation, or you may have come here already with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. I would begin by urging you with your case, or with your case writing, what is it you want out of this process? Do you want good, strong publications? Do you want material for your own course? Do you want royalties? If you're doing this just to get royalties, maybe not. But the point is, everything has to fit with your goals, okay? And the theme of what I'm going to talk about here is within the case of the instructor's manual, everything has to fit. The first tip I will give that will cure a lot of headaches for you and for wherever you send it. Look at the requirements of the publication or publisher before you send it off. So I will give you my example. At Case Research Journal, there is a copyright statement. If you go to our website, it says all submissions must have this statement on the first page. About half of the submissions I get don't have that statement on the first page. Okay? It's an easy fix. I email them, I say I'm going to send it back to you, put it on, here's where you find it. But it communicates something to me that they did not go to our webpage and read the instructions. These are easy things. It amazes me sometimes when I review or when I work at the journal, how often people have not even read the webpage of the publication that they're sending to, that it doesn't fit within the journal, or that there are specific instructions they did not follow. For your case, cover the basics first. I will go into some of this in more detail in coming slides. So in the case, there has to be a story. This is not just presenting information. There's a narrative, there is a story that you are telling. In that story, there have to be characters, the decision maker. If you give me a case and say, Facebook has a decision to make, well, Facebook doesn't have a decision to make because Facebook isn't a person. A person at Facebook has a decision to make, okay? There has to be that decision and there has to be sufficient data for the decision maker to make that decision. In the instructor's manual or teaching note, I use them both, there have to be certain components. You need your learning objectives. You need to explain how to teach the case. And you need your analysis and your conclusions. So make sure you have all of that. The introduction of the case, typically for an ACRA or CRJ case or an Ivy case or a Harvard case, the format is the introduction to the case takes place at the end of the story. So Eric was trying to figure out what to talk about in his presentation. He was sitting in front of his computer and he had all these ideas and didn't know where to start. And then you tell that part of the story, and then you go back to the beginning of the story. Okay? Eric, I just received an invitation to come and speak at ALAC on this topic, so and so, and you tell the whole story, and you provide all the information, and you end the story back where you started. That introduction has to do a lot. It has to provide enough information that the person understands the decision, the company, the decision maker, and enough of the context. So if I'm writing a case about a company, a real estate company that only works with veterinarian practices, that's not something a lot of people know about. I'm going to have to put 1 or 2 sentences in there explaining what it is that this company does, because people will not be able to understand the context of the decision without that. Really what you're trying to do with the introduction is tell the reader what they need to know to understand the rest of the case. You're giving them enough, and you're giving them enough to know why they're reading the rest of the case because they understand the decision they have to make. Some people will tell you there has to be urgency, right? That there's a need for strong urgency. I don't necessarily agree, but the decision has to be important enough. And maybe it's important because it's urgent, or maybe it's important because it's a big strategic decision, but there has to be something there that tells us why are we spending our time on that. For the case information itself, I have 4 questions I think everyone should ask themselves for the information in the case. Is this information very interesting? If so, leave it in the case. Is this information necessary to make the decision? If so, yes, leave it in the case. Is this information necessary for context, to understand the world in which this decision takes place? Fine, leave it in. And does my contact, does the person I interviewed, are they insisting I put this information in the case? Well, then you have to put it in. If it doesn't fit one of those categories, consider removing it, because you probably don't need it. If there is a lot of information in your case that the student will not use, why is it there? The most frequent comment I give to authors is your case is too long. It needs to be shortened. You do not need to give 3 pages of company history or industry information. I wrote a case on a small travel agency in a small town in Canada. I don't need to know the global travel statistics because it's not important to this one company. Okay, and think about where this information goes. Think about when it will be relevant to the reader and what sort of momentum you have in the story. For a decision-focused case, you also need to be looking forward. If all you have is information about what's happened in the past, there's not a lot to work with for that decision looking forward. So you need a lot of information about the current situation or about where we expect things to go. Okay? If you just give students information about background, they will only analyze the background, they will not think it. For the instructor's manual, I would strongly recommend you think of it this way. This is a manual where any instructor, professor, whoever can teach it by picking up and reading this document. It has everything they need. It explains the theories and the concepts. It tells them how to teach it in the classroom. It links the learning objectives to the questions. It has everything that is needed. Because not every instructor has the knowledge of the situation or the concepts or the analysis like you do. This might be used by someone who's never taught before. This might be used by someone who's not an expert in that particular area, so you need to provide that information for them. And the main thing is, and this is something I learned from Maria actually, well, the table that you had with Michael, everything has to fit together, okay? So you're answering the discussion questions using a combination of theory or concepts or calculations, whatever you want to call it, and case information. Every discussion question should involve both case information and some sort of conceptual knowledge. Because if you're only asking about the conceptual knowledge, you don't need a case. And if you're only asking about information in the case, you're not doing any analysis. So everything has to be a combination. You're doing this in order to achieve your learning objectives, and you explain how to do this in your teaching suggestions. So all the parts of the instructor's manual must fit together. They must be consistent internally, and it must be consistent with the case. I've read many, many cases where I finish the case and I think, okay, the decision they make has to do with logistics. And then I read the instructor's manual and say, okay, this case is to be used in human resources class to talk about hiring and firing. And is this the right case that I read? Because it makes sense to the person who wrote it, they see the link, but that link is not really there. That consistency is not really there. So thank you for your attention and inviting me here today. I will tell you, if you have any questions, you can contact me. My email address is on the screen. I am also on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there. I always ask any group that I speak to, if you do contact me on LinkedIn, put a note, because I'm here, you all know my name, I don't know all your names. So just put, I met you at ALAC or whatever, and that way I know not to ignore the request. Okay? I'm happy to answer questions now if we have time, or later via email, and I have this handout for whoever wants one.
Hey Eric, I have a question.
Yes.
In the last session, Maria talked us about the AI,
Yes.
artificial intelligence, to help you to write in cases.
Yes.
What do you think about it? Is AI right?
What do I, Eric, personally think about it, or what do I, as editor of Case Research, think about it? Well, Eric does not use AI. I am not a fan, okay? As far as the journal goes, we had drafted an AI policy. We have not posted it because it's difficult as everything changes constantly. Where I am at is, if you use AI to write the case or translate your case, disclose that to me. Tell me. I'm not going to reject it because of that. I may have questions, but explain. There's a research methodology section in the instructor's manual. Tell me what you used it for and why, and I'm probably okay with that. I'm not going to tell someone you can't use AI to translate your case, because that's going to advantage some people and disadvantage others, and I want the best cases from everywhere. But it is a tricky situation. The other part of the answer I will give you is wait and see. I am only editor until December, and the new editor may have a different policy. Other questions? Okay, well, feel free to reach out later. Thank you for having me at ALAC. I really enjoyed being here. Don't take that I'm taking my suitcase and going as a sign that I just want to leave. I have a flight to catch. But thank you all, and I hope that you all get home safe and that you write excellent cases, and that I will see you at the NACRA conference sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Profesor Domansky. A continuación, premiaremos los mejores casos y ensayos del Congreso y se clausurará el evento con unas palabras de la Presidenta saliente y entrega de la bandera al Presidente entrante de ALAC. Y palabras de nuestro director de la escuela.
No, premiación primero, premiación.
Esperen que faltan los momentos.
¿Cómo están? ¿Cómo les fue? ¿Cómo se sienten después de este ALAC?
Súper.
¿Ya? ¿Bien? ¿Tranquilos? Sí, ya, perdón. Estábamos preparados, pero...
¿Cómo es el proceso de presentación?
Cada uno, bueno, sí, vamos a hablar del proceso. El proceso de premiación es cada uno de los coordinadores de mesa hace la propuesta de cuál es el mejor caso de su mesa. Y después existe una terna dentro del comité que revisa los documentos y se decide cuál es el mejor caso de la mesa. ¿Vale? Entonces, existen dos categorías. La primera categoría es mejor caso. La segunda categoría es mejor ensayo, que son como las dos opciones que tenemos. Entonces, me voy a ir así directo al grano. ¿Nos vamos a proyectar notas, ¿eh?
Sí.
¿Ah, sí? No, pero después de que los digas.
Sí, todavía no.
Efectivamente.
Entonces, ALAC otorga el presente diploma a con la presentación del caso titulado Liderazgo Femenino Consciente en la Educación Superior. Entonces, María del Pilar y Roberto Gómez Tobías, felicitaciones.
Eso sí que no me lo esperaba.
Ya, sorpresa. Roberto.
Gracias.
Sin micrófono, sin micrófono.
Oh, gracias. Qué bendición. Fíjate que nos falta una fotito.
La oficial.
Empiezo.
3, 2, 1.
Gracias.
Gracias. Y ahora, ALAC otorga el presente diploma al mejor caso titulado Potenciando la metodología de casos a través del uso de tecnologías en la enseñanza del cálculo diferencial, escrito por Samuel Pereira. Ahora sí sabes por qué me toca.
Listo. 3, 2, 1.
Muy bien, bien,
Lo único que quería mencionar acerca de todas estas premiaciones y estas cosas es que cuando nosotros tomamos la decisión de que le íbamos a apostar con Sebas a hacer el ALAC aquí con el Poli, hicimos unas capacitaciones y quiero destacar el esfuerzo, el entusiasmo, el compromiso y cómo de verdad los profes de aquí del Politécnico tuvieron como este ánimo de aprender, o sea, siempre muy abiertos a entrar en esta metodología. Sé que muchos de ustedes han escrito casos mucho más enfocados en investigación, entonces de verdad quería como agradecerles por haberle apostado a eso y entonces es un gran resultado, ¿vale? Entonces gracias por eso.
Muchas gracias a todos por la asistencia al Politécnico Colombiano. Realmente fue un placer recibirlos, acogerlos en nuestra casa de estudios en estos 3 días de jornada. Espero que hayamos cumplido las expectativas con lo que relaciona al Politécnico Colombiano, como bien mencionaba Lorena, que se me adelantó a lo que quería decir. Valoramos el proceso. para nosotros esta apuesta metodológica va a marcar un hito importante en lo que viene para la escuela y lo que queremos realmente en la formación de nuestros estudiantes, con un acercamiento especial al sector empresarial. El tema del liderazgo femenino ha sido ya un tema de estudio presente en la universidad y principalmente en la Escuela de Negocios. Lo trabajamos desde el programa de economía y desde la política pública. Revisamos, como decía la profesora Laura, los techos de cristal. ¿Por qué las mujeres, siendo más preparadas, muchas veces cumpliendo las competencias, ganan menos que un hombre? Hay unas barreras estructurales. Y en países latinoamericanos, unos conflictos sociales y culturales muy arraigados. Muchas veces los mexicanos y los colombianos nos parecemos mucho en los temas también asociados al machismo, donde hay que trabajar, mirar este tema de barreras. Muchas gracias a ALAC, muchas gracias a todos los presentes, Lorena por siempre trabajar en conjunto, en familia. Muchas veces no nos creen que seamos primos, pero somos primos. Realmente fue una experiencia placentera. Gracias a todos por estar aquí.
Bueno, ahora tendremos las palabras de nuestra doctora Lorena.
De la presidenta saliente. Bueno, trataré de no llorar, lo prometo. Bueno, para cerrar este evento, y antes de ponerme absolutamente romántica, quiero agradecer a Diana Andrés, quiero agradecer a Paula, quiero agradecer a Pau, a Irma y a todos los miembros del staff, porque sin ustedes no hubiera sido posible. ¿Sí? Me metieron el hombro, así que muchas gracias, les vamos a regalar. Y bueno, quise concluir este congreso y simposio hablándoles de Zoe. Zoe es mi amada sobrina de 2 años, a la que muy seguramente en unos años le voy a contar de este encuentro. Le diré que, aunque ella tuvo oportunidades y una educación excepcionales, en el 2025 aún era necesario abrir espacios de diálogo porque la equidad de género estaba en progreso. Muy seguramente la felicitaré por hacer mucho de lo que la apasiona, por ser una niña que se permite el sentir y por inspirar a otros con proyectos enfocados en la capacidad que tenemos cada uno de sumar, de tocar y de cambiar vidas. José Casio, hoy con esta bandera que acabamos de bajar, te entrego la presidencia de ALAC con la satisfacción de haber cumplido y la responsabilidad de llevar este barco al siguiente puerto. Gracias a todos ustedes, miembros de ALAC, por la confianza y José, confiamos en ti. El momento más importante. Bueno, con la bandera abierta.
Magna responsabilidad.
Y bueno, todavía no lo hemos definido, pero seguro nos vemos en algún lugar de América para el 20º Encuentro ALAC 2026. Y más. Presidente, quería decir unas palabras.
Gracias. Los símbolos hay que... Los símbolos son importantes. Creo que hay que, especialmente en esta época donde creemos que los símbolos, las palabras muchas veces no cuentan, también debemos entender que esto tiene un significado y un significado muy importante. No solo para mí, que estoy recibiendo esta responsabilidad, sino también para ustedes, ¿okay? Porque esta es una comunidad de colegas, es una comunidad de académicos, es una comunidad de amigos, ¿sí? Yo voy a colocar esto un segundito por acá. Y sí voy a leer un poquito. ¿Se me escucha bien sin micrófono o preferimos hacerlo con micrófono?
Por favor, con
micrófono.
micrófono.
Okay. Bueno, oficialmente muy buenos días a todos, a todas, estimadas autoridades del Politécnico Gran Colombino, Gran Colombiano, disculpen. Lo que pasa es que recuerden que yo soy venezolano y vengo con la idea del Gran Colombino. ¿Okay? Me disculpo por el error histórico. Decana Daisy de la Roa, director de la Escuela de Negocios y Desarrollo Internacional Sebastián Chacón Marín, miembro de la Junta Directiva de la Asociación Latinoamericana de Casos ALAC, invitados especiales y ponentes internacionales, Eric Dolansky, Diana Saucedo, María Ballesteros Dorada, Laura Cristancho y Araceli Castellano. Colegas apasionados por el método del caso. Permítanme comenzar este momento tan especial agradeciendo profundamente al Politécnico Gran Colombiano, sede Medellín. Especialmente por abrirnos las puertas y por esa calurosa acogida de la que hemos sido nosotros receptores durante todos estos días de evento. Nos han brindado durante estas jornadas de congreso ese abrazo caluroso, ese apoyo académico que todos necesitamos, porque al final del día también nosotros requerimos feedback, requerimos retroalimentación en el trabajo académico que realizamos todos. Quería además nuevamente dar las gracias especiales a la decana Daisy, que sé que no está con nosotros, ¿okay? Pero por favor mándenle mi saludo y mi diferencia. Por supuesto a Sebastián, que además es de la casa, y digo que es de la casa porque al ser primo de Lorena, de la casa. ¿Okay? Por su apoyo, por su hospitalidad, por su compromiso con esta experiencia académica. Quiero agradecer también la presencia de nuestros invitados especiales y ponentes internacionales, quienes con su generosa apertura, pero una apertura intelectual, han elevado el nivel de nuestras conversaciones. Eric, Diana, María, Lauren, Araceli, gracias por su tiempo, por su pasión, por el método del caso. Mi gratitud también va para todos los miembros de la Junta Directiva de la ALAC. No los voy a mencionar a todos porque somos varios, ¿verdad? Pero ustedes saben quiénes son. No solo, ¿verdad?, a los que nos han podido acompañar presencialmente en este evento, sino también a aquellos que de manera virtual nos han podido acompañar en algunas sesiones o que quizás lamentablemente no pudieron estar en esta ocasión por compromisos profesionales. Su trabajo silencioso, constante y comprometido han sido esencial para llegar a este punto. Un agradecimiento muy especial para, por supuesto, Lorena Palacios, nuestra presidenta saliente, por su liderazgo firme, cercano. Lorena, sé que tengo unos zapatos muy grandes por llenar. Espero tener la entereza, la sabiduría y estar a la altura de la vara muy alta que me dejas. Y además, súper orgulloso que haya sido ese intercambio de banderas de una dama y qué dama hacia este servidor. Este año la ALAC celebra 19 años. Se dice rápido, pero detrás de ese número hay casi 2 décadas de esfuerzo colectivo, pero también de pasión. ¿Y pasión en qué? En la enseñanza, en la construcción de esta comunidad que está representada el día de hoy. 19 años impulsando el método de casos en América Latina. 19 años de sembrar ideas, debates, aprendizajes, pero también amistades. Y como organización ya mayor de edad, ya tenemos más de 18 años, nos corresponde ahora asumir una nueva etapa. Una etapa donde la consolidación, la sostenibilidad y la innovación caminen de la mano. Este congreso ha sido especial por muchas razones, pero en particular por el tema que nos convocó: casos de enseñanza y liderazgo femenino. Confieso que este tema me toca profundamente, aunque por obvias razones soy hombre. Mi vida siempre ha estado profundamente marcada por la fuerza, la sabiduría y la resiliencia de mujeres extraordinarias. Fui criado solo por mi madre. Tengo una hermana mayor a la que adoro. Mi hija, una hija maravillosa, todos decimos lo mismo de nuestros hijos, ¿verdad? Pero no va a ser la excepción. Mi hija Camila, de 7 años, también lo es. Además de que 2 de mis 3 perritos, Brisa y Betty, son perritas. Entonces, créanme, es complejo, ¿verdad?, ejercer liderazgo masculino cuando has estado rodeado de tanta mujer. Y además yo súper encantado de cederle ese espacio a ellas, especialmente porque entendemos es una realidad. No solo es necesario, sino también es una reivindicación histórica. ¿Ok? Y bueno, ni hablar, por supuesto, de la situación en mi casa con el tercer perrito, Beto. Si se dieron cuenta, son 3 B. Todos tienen por la misma B: Beto, Brisa y Betty, porque los únicos 2 hombres de la casa somos el hijo. Muchas veces se complica. ¿Ok? Y precisamente creo que eso es lo que el método de caso nos permite hacer. Nos permite humanizar el aprendizaje. Nos permite salir de la teoría abstracta y entrar en ese mundo real, donde vamos a enfrentar dilemas éticos, vamos a enfrentar emociones y cómo las canalizamos. No reprimirlas, canalizarlas. ¿Ok? ¿Cómo tomamos decisiones difíciles? Pero también en una región como la nuestra, donde tenemos desafíos complejos, recursos escasos. Enseñar con casos es una manera poderosa de formar líderes críticos, éticos y empáticos, capaces de transformar realidades como ya lo están haciendo muchos de ustedes. Como presidente de la ALAC asumo con humildad y con entusiasmo el compromiso de seguir construyendo una comunidad vibrante y diversa que celebre nuestras diferencias culturales. Eso es lo bonito de la ALAC. En la ALAC convergen mexicanos, colombianos, ecuatorianos, venezolanos, chilenos, argentinos, uruguayos, guatemaltecos, de todos los países de América Latina, incluso de España también, y por supuesto también de Estados Unidos y de otras latitudes. Y eso creo que es lo que hace ALAC, ¿okay?, una institución poderosa, una institución con una comunidad vibrante, diversa, pero que está unida por una misma convicción: que enseñar con casos es enseñar para la vida. Queremos expandir nuestra red, fortalecer alianzas estratégicas, ofrecer más oportunidades de formación para profesores, estudiantes y adaptarnos a los tiempos que corren, sin perder lo que somos, sin perder la esencia ALAC. En pocas palabras, queremos que la ALAC no solo sea vigente, sea vanguardista. A quienes están aquí por primera vez, bienvenidos a esta familia académica. A quienes ya han tenido la oportunidad de acompañarnos a lo largo de los años, gracias por esa constancia, por esa lealtad y por ese compromiso, no con nosotros, con ustedes y su proceso de formación. creo que el viaje continúa. Y ese viaje continúa, y dentro de esa bitácora que podemos tener trazada para ese viaje, debemos entender que lo mejor siempre está por ver. Ya para finalizar, importante que todos estemos pendientes de las comunicaciones de la ALAC, porque el Congreso 2026, la sede la vamos a estar anunciando muy pronto, así que estemos atentos a ello. Y no me queda más que agradecerles a todos ustedes por su presencia y aprovechar de disfrutar la actividad que hemos planeado como cierre de la visita a la comuna número 13. Muchísimas gracias. Un abrazo.
¿Video? Tomémonos la foto de cierre, por favor, todos siguen aquí al... Bien. Gracias.
Todos juntos, ¿saben?
Hasta buenas tardes, gracias.